See you on the other side of this 3-minute video from President Benson.
The position of this church on the subject of communism has never changed. We consider it the greatest satanical threat to the peace, prosperity, and spread of God's work among men that exists on the face of the earth. Fortunately, we have materials to help us face this threat, such as President McKay's booklet of statements on communism and the Constitution of the United States, Leon Skousen's book, The Naked Communist, which we were advised to read. But the greatest handbook for freedom in this fight against communism and other evils is the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith said that the Book of Mormon was the keystone of our religion and the most correct book on earth. This most correct book on earth states that the downfall of two great American civilizations came as a result of secret conspiracies whose desire was to overthrow the freedom of the people. Now, undoubtedly, Moroni could have pointed out many factors that led to the destruction of the people. But notice how he singled out the secret combinations, just as the church today could point out many threats to peace, prosperity, and the spread of God's work, but it has singled out the greatest threat as the great conspiracy. There is no conspiracy theory in the Book of Mormon. It is a conspiracy fact. And along this line, I would highly recommend to you a new book entitled None Dare Call It, Conspiracy by Gary Allen. Then Moroni speaks to us in this day and says, Wherefore the Lord commandeth you, when ye shall see these things come among you, that ye shall awake to a sense of your awful situation, because this secret combination which shall be among you. The Book of Mormon further warns that whatever nation shall uphold such secret combinations to get power and gain until they shall spread over the nation, behold, they shall be destroyed. That scripture should alert us to what's ahead unless we repent, because there is no question but that our nation is increasingly upholding the communist conspiracy today. By court edict, communists can run for government office, teach in our schools, hold office in labor unions, work in our defense plants, serve in our merchant marines, and so forth. As a nation, we are helping, it would seem, to underwrite communist revolutionaries in our country.
All right. So he referenced a book here. Where is it? None Shall Call It Conspiracy. You can see it right there. I picked it up. You can find it easily for free if you just Google None Shall Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen. I picked mine up just on Amazon. It was free. And it's very short. It's about 140 pages. I would recommend, he recommends that all members and just people everywhere read it, because in some ways it warns of the same things that the Book of Mormon warns of, but really does it on the nose on regarding what is actually happening in our day. And President Benson, I can't remember his exact position he had with the government. Shoot, I wish I would have come in prepared for that. But anyway, someone will probably mention it below. He was very close. He was my prophet when I was very, very young. I didn't recognize how awesome he was until much later. And he recommends this book. So again, I'm going to go through it a little bit here. I'm going to go through the first chapter. There's 8 chapters. It's this one here. I just got this digital version. And let's see, the different chapters. First one, don't confuse me with facts. Number 2, I'm in number 2 now, but we're just going to talk about number 1. Socialism, road, what's going on here? There we go. Royal Road to Power for the Super Rich. And that one's interesting because he talks about communism, but he kind of points out that when, so many people in the 1970s are going to be against communism. He mentioned like 99% of people would profess as against communism. Not sure what it would be now. But even then, it's like nobody can really define it, and he does a good job starting to define it here in the second chapter. But that'll be on another video. The money manipulators, bankrolling the Bolshevik Revolution, establishing the establishment, the Rockefellers and the Reds. Looking forward to that one. Pressure from above and pressure from below. You are the answer. So we're gonna go through the first one, and keep in mind, like I'm Canadian, and so take what I have with a grain of salt as I'm talking about like American politics and stuff. But everyone's watching. Like everyone watches American politics. We all kind of, a lot of us really recognize that as goes the U.S., kind of goes the rest of the world in a lot of ways, and we're all watching to see what is going to happen. Let me go through some of this introduction for you, and then I think I'm going to hide it because some it might be copyright and stuff to like have it just open, but it might not be that bad if I just do the introduction. The story you are about to read is true. The names have not been changed to protect the guilty. This book may have the effect of changing your life. After reading this book, you will never look at national and world events in the same way again. None dare call it conspiracy may be a very controversial book. At first, it will receive little publicity, and those whose plans are exposed in it will try to kill it by the silent treatment. For reasons that become obvious as you read this book, it will not be reviewed in all the proper places or be available on your local bookstand. However, there is nothing these people can do to stop a grassroots book distributing system. Eventually, it will be necessary for the people and organizations named in this book to try to blunt its effect by attacking it or the author. And this is written in 1971, and already just reading the first chapter, you can tell how relevant it is. It sounds like something just written today almost. They have a tremendous vested interest in keeping you from discovering what they are doing, and they have the big guns of the mass media at their disposal to file the barrages at none dare call it conspiracy. By sheer volume, the experts will try to ridicule you out of investigating for yourself as to whether or not the information in this book is true. They will ignore the facts that the author admits that some of his ideas are about to conjecture because the people who know the truth are not about to confess. They will find a typographical error or argue some point that is open to debate. If necessary, they will lie in order to protect themselves by smearing this book. Psychologically, many people would prefer to believe those who poo-poo the information herein because we all like to ignore bad news. We do so at our own peril. Having been a college instructor, state senator, and now a congressman, I have had experience with real professionals at putting up smoke screens to cover up their own actions by trying to destroy the accuser. There we go. I hope that you will read the book carefully, draw your own conclusions, and not accept the opinions of those who, of necessity, must attempt to discredit the book. Your future may depend on it. October 25th, 1971, John G. Schmitz, United States Congressman. Again, this is a book that President Benson wanted everyone to read, and so we'll go through some of this here. And I think there is definitely some relevancy in our day with, regardless of where you stand on a number of these end of days timelines or things like Ezra's Eagle or what you think about people like Trump and, whatnot. I think this is very relevant in seeing kind of the things that are going on in our day. So I'm actually going to cover this up, and I'm going to bounce around to a few different points in here. 5 or 6 main points and just kind of give an overview of some of the things that come up. Now, this first chapter called Don't Confuse Me with Facts, it has to do a lot with there's a war going on. And in large part, there is, he starts the chapter with this analogy or whatever you want to call it, those old pictures where you would see an image and then within it says you're looking for a donkey pulling a cart with a boy in it, and you can't find it until later on in the magazine or something, or when someone points it out to you, it becomes apparent, and that's like you can't even look at the same thing without seeing the hidden picture. And so this is what they are trying to, or this author is trying to do for people. And he addresses the idea of conspiracy in how some people, when they believe in, when they start talking about things that are considered conspiracy, it comes with some social stigma and things like that, especially when they believe that there are conspiracies that have to do with, I suppose all conspiracies would have to do with some kind of actual planning towards those things that are labeled conspiracy. One of the quotes here, FDR once said, "In politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way." But then there are, on the other side, those who are very much against conspiracies, and like often scholars and people like that, and people that, people find them credible, but sometimes don't really spend more than 5 minutes into things that are, could be considered conspiracy. And so believe that everything kind of happens by accidents, stuff like recessions and famines and things like that. But this book is really trying to kind of state that more often than not, there is something deeper and darker going on, much like how the Book of Mormon speaks of Gadianton robbers, and whether you speak of it as deep state or things like that. It's an uphill battle against these kinds of forces, or, according to this book, and President Benson sure seemed to feel the same way. Let me skip ahead to a thing. Here we go. Quote, "Why is it that virtually all reputable scholars and mass media columnists and commentators reject the cause and effect of conspiratorial theory of history?" Meaning, like, why do they reject the idea that there's something more sinister going on behind the scenes to push these things? Primarily, most scholars follow the crowd in the academic world, just as most women follow fashions. Not sure if that's true, but I mean, with all the Stanleys and stuff. While professors and pontificators profess to be tolerant and broad-minded, in practice it's strictly a one-way street, with all traffic flowing left. A Maoist can be tolerated by liberals of ivory towerland, or by the establishment's media pundits, but to be a conservative, and a conservative who propounds a conspiratorial view, is absolutely verboten. Not sure what that means. Is that like anathema? Verboten, meaning forbidden, especially by an authority. Okay. Better you should be a drunk at a national WCTU convention. What the heck is that? Women's Christian Temperance Union? Is that right? No. No. Oh yeah, and the main purpose is to promote abstinence from alcohol. Secondly, these people have over the years acquired a strong vested emotional interest in their own errors, like doubling down. Their intellects and egos are totally committed to the accidental theory. Most people are highly reluctant to admit that they have been conned or have shown poor judgment. To inspect the evidence of the existence of a conspiracy guiding our political destiny, from behind the scenes would force many of the people to repudiate a lifetime of accumulated opinions. It takes a person with strong character indeed to face the facts and admit he was wrong, even if it was because he was uninformed. I don't know why that's so hard to do. Like in my mind, it should show that you are thinking instead of just doubling down all the time. But I mean, such is the case. Oh, and such was the case with the author of this book. It was only because he set out to prove the conservative anti-communists wrong that he happened to end up. Here, hold on one sec. Sorry, was interrupted. It was only because he was set out, or that he set out to prove the conservative anti-communists wrong that he happened to end up writing this book. His initial reaction to the conservative point of view was one of suspicion and hostility, and it was only after many months of intensive research that he had to admit that he had been conned. I read a series once, a fiction series, and man, it was a long series, and it had 10 big books, and each of the books were like 800, 1,000 pages long, and it took me a while to get through this. And each one of these, even though there was a long arc, kind of tackled a specific thing. And the 7th book in the series, it really focused on political things going on. It had the political good and the political bad, if you can call it that, even though there's a lot of gray. But it had the leaders of both. But then it really kind of focused on the followers of each. And what stuck out with me, and I thought was poignant, had to do not as much even, when it came to the actual ideas, yes, they did talk about those things, but it talked about the nature of the people who were following on either side and how they kind of were the same people in a lot of ways. And that the danger was in their certainty with whatever idea that they had, and that even the leader of the bad group would look at his minions or whatever, the people below, kind of disdainfully, and just think that they are just clueless because of their own certainty in their position, without really, you can go to wrong opinions, but at least when you're looking at both sides and you're kind of taking things with discernment and things like that. Anyway, it's just that certainty. It's that certainty can be very damaging, especially when people are leaving high school and they're in their 20s and they're wanting to be grown, and they're when I was in that phase too. We become so certain with our ideas, and it can be very dangerous. And it seems like in all of these revolutions and things, it's always the high school and young college kids that seem to be the useful idiots of the day. Such was the case. Okay. Like, this person was trying to prove the anti-communists wrong until he questioned his certainty, or went into things and really looked into more, and had to admit that he was wrong. Politicians and intellectuals are attracted to the concept that events are propelled by some mysterious tide of history or happen by accident. By this reasoning, they hope to escape the blame when things go wrong. Most intellectuals, pseudo and otherwise, deal with the conspiratorial theory of history simply by ignoring it. They never attempt to refute the evidence. It can't be refuted. If and when the silent treatment doesn't work, these objective scholars and mass media opinion holders resort to personal attacks, ridicule, and satire. The personal attacks tend to divert attention from the facts, which an author or speaker is attempting to expose. The idea is to force the person exposing the conspiracy to stop the exposure and spend his time and effort defending himself. Does that sound like anything? Wherever you stand on Donald Trump, I think in my opinion, the thing that he has done the most has been in pushing against this, pushing against the powers that be. And you can think that he's like the biggest tool for the powers that be. I don't feel that way. I think that especially regarding the whole fake news thing, and like people are waking up to some of that, and you might have a totally different opinion, but that's my opinion on really what he's done. All right. Let me go to the next one. A technical hiccup here. Here we go. The most effective weapon used against the conspiratorial theory of history are ridicule and satire. These extremely potent weapons can be cleverly used to avoid any honest attempt at refuting the facts. They call people, right-wing extremists. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep getting interrupted. That's okay. Where was I? Most intellectuals pseudo or otherwise deal with the conspiratorial theory of history simply by ignoring it. They never attempt to refute the evidence. It can't be refuted. If and when the silent treatment doesn't work, these objective scholars, and it says objective scholars, and mass media opinion molders resort to personal attacks, ridicule, and satire. And this is written again in 1971. Intellectuals are fond of mouthing cliches like the conspiracy theory is often tempting. However, it was overly simplistic. In most cases, liberals simply accuse all those who discuss the conspiracy of being paranoid. Ah, you right-wingers, they say, rustling every bush, kicking out over every rock, looking for imaginary boogeymen. It is not surprising that millions of innocent and well-meaning people, in a natural desire not to appear naive, assume the attitudes and repeat the cliches of the opinion makers. These persons, in their attempt to appear sophisticated, assume their mentor's air of smug superiority, even though they themselves have not spent 5 minutes in study on the subject of international conspiracy. The accidentalists would have us believe that ascribing any of our problems to planning is simplistic, and all our problems are caused by poverty, ignorance, and disease, hereinafter abbreviated as PID, poverty, ignorance, disease. They ignore the fact that organized conspirators use PID, real and imagined, as an excuse to build a jail for us. Accidentalists ignore the fact that some of the more advanced nations in the world have been captured by communists. And again, Chapter 2 will kind of talk about exactly what that means. I think we think of Marx and specific kind of elements of communism, but really we can't all agree about some of the core things that are at the, behind it. And that'll be interesting. It already has been interesting going into Chapter 2, which will be in the next video. Czechoslovakia was one of the world's most modern industrial nations, and Cuba had the second highest per capita income of any nation in Central and South America. Talk about this Professor Carol Quigley, who was, would expose some of these things. Maybe doesn't have all the same conclusions, but was labeled like a right-wing extremist, even though he had these liberal credentials. He says this: I know of the operations of this network because I have studied it for 20 years and have permitted for 2 years in the early 1960s, and was permitted to examine its papers and secret records. And this is all in bold. I have no aversion to it or to most of its aims, and have for much of my life been close to it, and to many of its instruments. I have objected both in the past and recently to a few of its policies, but in general, my chief difference of opinion is that it wishes to remain unknown. And I believe its role in history is significant enough to be known. We agree. Its role in history does deserve to be known. So it's this idea, this first chapter, that there is something in the shadows, right? In this case, truth is really stranger than fiction. And earlier they talk about these, whatever is in the shadows, as the insiders. We are dealing with with history's greatest whodunit, a mystery thriller which puts Earl Stanley Gardner to shame. If you love a mystery, you'll be fascinated with the study of the operations of the insiders. It must be remembered that the first job of any conspiracy, whether it is in politics, crime, or within a business office, is to convince everyone else that no conspiracy exists. The conspirators' success will be determined largely by their ability to do this. Think of all the different gates, whatever gate. We're almost done here. Because the establishment controls the media, anyone exposing the insiders will be the recipient of a continuous fusillade, did I say that right? Of invective from newspapers, magazines, TV, and radio. In this manner, one is threatened with loss of social respectability if he dares broach the idea that there is organization behind any of the problems currently racking America. Unfortunately for many people, social status comes before intellectual honesty. Deep down, these people are afraid they may be laughed at if they take a stand, or may be denied an invitation to some social climber's cocktail party. Instead of getting mad at the insiders, these people actually get angry at those who are trying to save the country by exposing the conspirators. We are hoping that the conspirators have underestimated the courage and patriotism remaining in the American people. So, again, President Benson wanted us to read this. So that's interesting. And you can see parallels all over in the Book of Mormon. And it's just interesting to see things really coming to a head right now, seemingly more than ever. And if you want me to keep going, I will continue with chapter 2, and we'll go through the whole thing. So talk to you later. Bye.